Hello and welcome to the FLL Workshop. My name is Ryan Gattaletta and I am the co-captain of LC Robotics. LC is happy to host this virtual workshop for coaches. We started this last year for coaches to share ideas and tips, and this year we will concentrate on the first ever virtual FLL season. We also want to remind you that we have helpful videos posted on our YouTube. That is another resource you can check out. You can find those through our Twitter or Facebook and our YouTube. We have Mr. Frank Larkin with us today, who is a retired founder of LC Robotics and is currently the FLL director of First Mid-Atlantic, who will talk about what the coming season is going to look like. We also have Joe McCullough to talk about the best practices for doing FLL during coronavirus. This will be open for any questions and discussions afterwards, so Mr. Larkin, you can take it away.
Thanks, Ryan. So LC reached out to me and said they were putting this together and asked me to kind of give an overview of where we are. We've had a couple of meetings with the planning committee. I have been meeting with teams on and off to kind of say how we're going to do this. I checked this morning and right now, hang on, I'm going to, hang on, let's see. Give me a quick second. Okay. I muted everybody, and you can unmute yourself if you want to talk. I left that on. So right now we have 61 teams, which I'm pretty surprised at, that actually have signed up, which is a good sign. For junior, we have to stop saying junior. This is killing me. For FLL Explore, we have 16 teams that are signed up. From the planning committee, I did reach out, and we do have a bunch of events that are currently planned. So I'm going to switch real. If we go over to the website, can you see that? Just shake your heads up and down. Okay. So so this is where we would have the events. You can go to midatlanticrobotics.com/FLL. Navigate yourself through the menu and you'll eventually reach here. I like to do it this way because everything, the whole season is on one page. So we do have some events already scheduled. I'm not sure if all of these events are actually going to happen because we may not have the participation. But now that we have 62 teams, I was estimating we'd probably have about 80. And so we're very close to getting to that. If anybody thinks that they want to run an event or something, let me know and I'll send you the link and we can gather your information. These are all going to be remote events. All right. A remote event is something we've never done before. First is putting together something called the First Remote Event Hub, which eventually is going to be the way that we manage all of these things, including judging and uploading files and whatnot. It is my understanding that you're going to get 3 rounds. You're actually going to get 3 rounds plus a practice round that all have to be recorded on the same day. And you will upload those to the First website. I'm looking at their website saying, okay, we got everybody in the country trying to upload videos. YouTube only allows you to do 6 a day, and you guys are expecting everybody to upload everybody in quick time. It's going to be a challenge. That will also take care of scheduling, judging, and whatnot. One of the concerns I have about it is what happens if a team is recording the round improperly and something is wrong. How are you going to get feedback? So those are a lot of questions we're feeding back to First and saying, how are we going to do this? To help us with that, we are planning on a couple of scrimmages, and they also will be virtual so that you can go out to those and run those scrimmages. I don't know that we're going to make them as fancy as we were in the past because it is kind of virtual. It might be more of a, let's kick the tires and see if we can make this work, because we are going to try to use the FLL remote hub, the First remote hub that they are putting together. And so this will give us a good chance to kind of play around with that system. The other thing that we talked about is I had a meeting with the planning committee Thursday night. And in the past, whenever we had events, it was always the idea that we had to get all of the FLL stuff out of the way in December. And because of Christmas, that really kind of prevented us from having at least one additional weekend. So this year, what I've asked, because in the case of FLL, in the case of FRC, their robot is the same robot as it was last year because they never got to play the season. So building the physical robot may actually be a lot easier, obviously, because it should already be there. However, what it means is that they might be able to spend more time with us to help us run these events, because they usually supply judges and guidance and all kinds of stuff. And since all events are going to be remote, I've asked if we can push the actual competition season to January, February, and all of the venue providers have agreed that that would be okay. We're pushing the scrimmages to late November and December. And so we will get a chance. Again, we have to worry about using the event hub from First. I want to make sure we have access to that. We're being told sometime in mid-September, October, we should be getting that. And then you guys will be getting guidelines as to how you actually have to record your events. What we might even do is First Mid-Atlantic might set up something where you can let us know that you have a video and you want a referee to look at it to make sure that it's okay. I know I can speak to our referees and see if we can set something like that up. The problem is uploading the files. Maybe we put them to Google. I don't know. We have to think about that, but that might not be a bad idea. So that's pretty much all I have. If anybody has any questions, by all means, please unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
Frank, what would be the cost of a qualifier? Would it be the same as in the past?
I've gone through the numbers, and because we're not going to have to supply food and T-shirts and a lot of other things we would be supplying in the past, I'm estimating around $90 instead of $125. And oh, by the way, we are also PA East is now part of us. Anybody on the call that was part of PA East? There we go. And what that means is we're talking about teams all the way out to Harrisburg. Just so you know, they were a bit smaller than us, but I think that was because they were cramped into the way they ran things. Now that FMA is now part of this, we can expand what it is that they can do. And so we're hoping to expand that quite a bit. Last year, they had 63 registered teams. We had 223. So you can see the numbers we were 4 times their size. However, they're very enthusiastic and they've already signed up to do events. I did visit a bunch of them when we went to their championship, which is really the only event that they ran. Everybody is on board and really wants to make this happen. So that's where that is. Any other questions?
Can I ask how you guys are going to run meetings with multiple kids touching everything? I'm coming to you guys from a school in New Jersey where we try to limit to 2 teams, but often have many more than that coming out in the beginning.
Right. Very good question. The reason Joe McCullough and Sam, I forgot your last name, are on this call is because they work with the Girl Scouts of America and they ran summer camps this summer. So I'm going to let them go into that. I was on the call with them for about 5 minutes and they hit me with at least a dozen really good ideas that I think are going to help you. Let me throw my 2 cents into it. I obviously can't tell you how to run your meetings, because First Mid-Atlantic can't have the liability of if something goes wrong, we get in trouble. So what I can say is things that I've heard. And what I've heard, for example, is one idea that we've been floating is for your robot building, if you can limit it to 1 day a week on a Saturday or a Sunday, open a garage door, put it outside as best you can, social distancing, all of those buzzwords that we've been hearing about. And that way, anything that gets touched, you're not going to have to sit there and clean up, because you can throw it in a cardboard box, close it, stick it in the garage, go away for a week, come back, and all the cooties are off it. So that to me sounds like a workable plan. You might also, and I think Sam and Joe will touch on it, have kids build remote. There's software out there. It's a little bit more of a challenge, and that's one of the reasons we're pushing the season off a little bit. Have them build remote using 3D software that's out there. They can talk to it much better than I can. But as far as all your other activities, Zoom or other things like that certainly can help. I'm investigating using Google Classroom and something called Flipgrid. My son is actually has a master's in educational tech, and he was willing to give a class on how to use this stuff, and maybe it'll help you. I've been looking at it. I'm iffy as to whether or not it would really help, but we're trying to do that. Sometime in September, we'll get that going, and if we can help. I think it'll certainly help the people with the junior teams or the explore teams. But the other thing is that one of the teams we have has put out a website that actually has a bunch of videos. The site is called Just Helping You Out on YouTube, and it's a channel put out by the people from Downingtown Robotics. One of their alumni there put the thing together, and he's recording a lot of the build sessions and those kinds of things that are going on, and example runs for FLL for this season. So you might check that out. I'm going to actually go in and post that onto the website and send out an announcement. Anything else?
Frank, before we go into how to do actual meetings or anything, just a couple questions on the season itself.
Yep.
So everything's going to be remote. Is that a first mandate at this point, or are we just trying to protect FMA and everybody in general?
It's a Frank Larkin mandate. It is not a first mandate. In fact, first says it can be you can do it any way you want, but you are taking the responsibility. My problem is right now, we don't know how many teams, although I do, as I earlier said, we have 63 teams signed up now. We don't know how many teams. Schools haven't even opened yet, and we don't know what that's going to look like. So right now, it's virtual. A lot of schools I've been talking to said, especially the public ones, none of them coming back. They can't. They're not allowed. Some of them might have it internally, but we have to see what happens when the school opens. In fact, the city of Philadelphia is shifting their whole season off to January through May. And they don't care about being part of competing with everybody else, because they find that they are so far behind by the time they get everything ready. They want their kids really to have a good experience. So they're shifting everything till January to May. So
Okay.
right now, I think it's going to be virtual. The other problem is, as Sean asked, how much is it going to cost? I mean, if I start charging $90 a team, and all of a sudden now we have in-person events, and I got to start paying for, buildings and food and blah, 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 I can't plan. So that becomes a real challenge. Does anybody, show of hands, does anybody really believe we're going to have in-person competitions when in the state of Pennsylvania, you can't have more than 25 in a building right now? I don't think it's going to happen. So.
I guess I'd like to think that we can do something. We're taking a lot away from the kids, and I get that. It's a complicated situation. Their majority are not going back to schools. That has an impact. We've seen the impact within our program.
Right.
On the kids. We've got 2 FRC teams, 7 FLL teams registered for this year right now. We've got 4 FLL Discover or Explore teams. I think I want to stick with junior. It drives me crazy too, Frank.
Right.
But we've actually got it. I think we're not quite with a Discover program. We're going to actually put them into Explore temporarily, but we don't have much of that happening yet. And we've actually started FTC because I'm on board with you. I just don't see how there's much in-person season happening, but especially when you get to the bigger fields, need for schools to be part of it. And I don't think that's going
Right.
to happen.
I
So
agree.
for FRC kids, we've started FTC teams this year
Right.
because I know, Tom's plan and Penn FTC is that they're doing virtual too, or remote, but they're also coordinating and planning on meets, what they're calling meets.
Right.
Not official, but you can go out if you have these teams and these kids that want to be out there and competing. They're still social distancing. They're still doing it in a manner where you don't have multiple teams at a field. We're looking at doing some of that for them and including a remote field where people can come use a field and shoot their video, because
Right.
not everybody can get a field.
Right.
I just feel like we're taking so much away from these younger kids that if there's an option somehow, but I do get the risk, the liability.
Sure. There's
Ourselves, we're personally kind of looking at, could we do meets? Could we do something like that? We do have access to some space.
I don't have any, we don't control anything that you do.
Okay.
You're a loose cannon there, Joe. Go right ahead.
I've been called that more than once in my life, Frank, believe it or not.
All right. Yeah, I don't know how we can possibly do it. We've been meeting with the board and meeting with others, and what happened. The interesting thing is what happened last year at the end of the FRC season. We did get Hatboro Horsham in, and then on a daily basis, we were having discussions. All right, what about this coming weekend? No, we're still doing it. We're still doing it. We're still doing it. The school came back. No, you're not doing it. Okay, I guess we're not doing it. Then we would go to the next week. Okay, we're still doing it. We're still doing it. No. So I think, as I said, I'm looking at. I've read the CDC website. I've read the PA websites. They actually disagree. CDC says 10. PA says 25. So I don't know how you justify that or make that happen.
Yet you have hundreds, if not 1,000+ people bumping into each other in a Target and a Home Depot and So
if you take that on, you're now taking on that responsibility.
Right. No, I get that. And again, I don't expect any school to take that responsibility, no matter what it is.
They're not going to. They're not going to.
So we've toyed with it because obviously, and that's why obviously we're here. We did run a summer camp for 5 weeks, which was, I think in the beginning, very difficult just in the process of you take your entire existence and now you throw it all up in the air and you go, what lands in this circle you can keep and what falls outside you can't. Because we had very specific areas in our building for FLL Junior, for FLL, for FRC. Then you start spreading people out. Suddenly your camps that were 30 kids are down to 5.
Right.
Your ability to have 10 kids in the same space, suddenly becomes 1, 2, and you realize you just can't do the size thing. So I get all of it, but I'm just exploring things to try and keep, we do have some kids within our program that we've heard direct from parents, if you weren't coming out, if we weren't doing it in person, we wouldn't sign up. And then we have other people that said, if you're not doing a virtual option, we won't sign up.
Right.
So we're actually doing a hybrid program for our regular season. But there's a lot kind of, in the background of that. So we did learn a lot from summer camp. We are implementing a lot of the things that you're talking about with, the robot build being distant and that kind of stuff. What we're kind of trying to target down with our team meetings is, because we're with so many teams in our building, we really just can't put away a robot for 2 or 5 days or a week. We're trying more of a positioning thing where we're using smart boards. We have a programmer at each meeting. We have a robot person at each meeting.
Can you guys explain that to me, Sam and Ryan? Is it okay if we switch to their discussion? Okay. So Sam and Joe McCullough were from the Girl Scout program that they run, the Eastern, what is it called, Joe? The Eastern
PA Robotics Alliance.
Why don't you guys go ahead and talk about the things you talk with me?
Okay. So I'm just going to intro the camp part. I mean, there was a lot learned in camp, and I know camps are over, but there was a lot of good stuff that we kind of learned coming out of that. So we did 5 weeks camp. Normally we, depending, because we would do FRC camp and FLL camp separately, 30 kids in the building. This year we're kind of restricted down to, 5 to 8. Social distancing, we planned out with our FRC kids long before camp started. I think overall, you know, what was an unforeseen, never done, you know, concept, keeping little kids 6 feet apart all day long for 7 hours, 8 hours, seemed impossible at one point, and sometimes proved too. It really did depend on kids, and I think that's where every team's going to kind of struggle with who they've got on them. I'm going to actually let Sam take over a little bit because I just had surgery, so my breathing is a little weird. So rather than me get too winded, I'll bounce in and out, and Sam can kind of talk about the stuff that we learned and the stuff we're implementing in our season.
So yeah, we did learn a lot from summer camp, and it did present. We went into it totally probably over prepared, and then not prepared enough. And those of you who are in education probably understand exactly what I'm saying. So we had overthought it and overthought it and overthought it, and the minute we started, of course, there were, you know, a million things that we hadn't planned on. So we're in a, just to preface, we're in a shopping mall. So we are not in a school. Our space is limited by when the mall reopened. So we were shut down until after the green phase. So we designed the summer camp. We went in. We have a very large footprint store. We are blessed with that. So we were able to really designate spaces. We did keep all kids mostly 6 feet apart. And obviously with FLL, that's a challenge because the table itself is not big enough to place kids 6 feet apart. So what we ended up doing is there is just one person at the table at a time. Now, of course, FLL runs are set up with 2 people at the table at a time, but we had basically taken it down to 1 person. For programming, that was another challenge because for programming, you always have somebody leaning over the laptop or the computer. You have people reaching over. We were very fortunate to be gifted smart boards this year. So the smart boards were incredibly valuable when it comes to collaboratively programming. The same thing can be achieved by using a very large monitor. That way kids have input, but you only actually have 1 person touching things. For things like building, which was what the main question was, which really is a challenge because especially when you have learners that need to touch things. And many of our kids, as we know in FLL, need to touch things. We broke up Lego sets into packets, more or less. And a kid gets a packet of Legos to work with and Technics and gets to build. And that is their set. If at any time pieces have to switch hands, they're either cleaned on that spot if they have to switch hands immediately, or you have to really think things out. And a lot of Legos can sit for a week. That's what Frank was saying, that a lot of things can sit and get rid of the cooties. We had a lot of instances where if it ever had to switch hands, it just sat. It takes a lot of thinking about everything you're doing and everything the kids are touching. Now, the CDC has come out with more that's not transmitted quite so much by objects you touch, and it's more by distance and respiratory droplets. So then you're back to, we sort of backed off on how frantically we were thinking about everything a kid was touching, and we started thinking about more distancing. And it sort of eased the brain after a while because it does get overwhelming. So we started with thinking just how close people were. So again, building collaboratively, it more or less doesn't happen. Now, we do have, as Joe was saying, we have a hybrid program. So our kids meet, and we're starting our season this week, but we've been running with our 1 girls team up until now, more or less testing all of this. Our kids have 1 hour a week in person and an hour and a half virtually. So during that virtual time, we've been using various Lego CAD programs, and we can put together a list of all this for everybody. So the kids can build at home, and then it comes out with a part and build list, and then you have one person actually building. Then you test. You test it. You use Zoom, of course, for the kids that can't come in. You run it on the table during an in-person meeting. We have kids that still can't attend our in-person meetings. They are just virtual. So we need to film everything that we do to make sure. We also utilize Google Classrooms, which Frank had touched on. Google Classrooms just works well for us. It is one centralized location to keep all the information. It's one location to work on project. It's one location to keep the links. It is one location to have communication between the coaches, mentors, and the students. We use Slack for general communication, but the Google Classroom is really very important to keep everything in one place. Plus, kids are familiar with it. Most kids are going to school either on Google Classrooms or Schoology, so they're familiar with the format, and there's a less of a learning curve on that. I'm trying to think of what else we did. Obviously, we had a huge ton of masks lying around. Anybody who comes in our shop, for one, they have to sign. There's this, a general overall waiver that they sign to come into our program, which is COVID-19 specific. Then we have a daily checklist that they have to sign, the parent or guardian has to sign off on, and that gets signed off on every time they walk in, that they have no symptoms, that they've come into contact, they've not come into contact with anyone with any symptoms. We're dependent on people, of course, being truthful, and we've discovered over summer camp that they were. We do take a temperature, and we sanitize their hands before they walk into our shop. And once then they're in a mask the entire time that they're in there. The only time masks was removed during summer camp was when they ate, and then they were more than 6 feet apart. Yeah, we'll get to that. And so that was a routine that we had every day. We had additional masks on hand because one thing little kids love to do is take off their masks, sneeze in their masks, blow their nose in their masks. I mean, those of you, all of you guys deal with young children, they're not hygienic. So we had to switch out masks quite a bit. So we had a big supply of disposable masks. Let's see, what else did we do? We had, of course, they sanitized a lot during the day. Constant on the bathroom. The waiver is an in-house waiver that I took off of someone else's, essentially. So before we did summer camp, I started following the summer camp professionals group, and they had one that they used, and I more or less just modified that. So it wasn't drawn up by a lawyer. So one other thing that my daughter wanted me to chime in on, and she's over here, is that for the Zoom calls, and it does, if you can get your own account, get your own account. It's worth the $15 a month. For the Zoom calls, we do utilize breakout rooms. And breakout rooms is really nice because it does allow us to give individualized attention to kids. We have kids, you know, we don't give a test or anything for kids that join our teams. So they're all over the spectrum, literally, and all over the spectrum for what they know coming in. Some have been in teams before, some have not. The breakout rooms was really a great opportunity during that hour-and-a-half virtual time to truly bring skills up to levels and meet the kids where they are. You know, we have kids with extremely short attention spans, and then we have kids with hyper-focused attention spans. And the breakout rooms really allows us to do something that we actually can't do normally during regular in-person meetings during a regular season, because we have all these kids in one room at one time. So the breakout rooms are actually quite advantageous, and that's probably one thing we would actually take with us after the pandemic is over and world returns to some sort of normal, is utilizing a breakout room virtual aspect, even if it's just a very brief time every week or whatever, we would figure that out into the routine. But that has really been so incredibly helpful.
I just have one question.
Yeah.
Could you explain, you said that you had Lego sets broken into packets that you gave out to each kid, and then that was their packet. Could you explain like how many Legos it was? Like, were you trying to let them make attachments for the robot, or what, were you building like pieces of the mat, or?
So we have them broken out into like your building sets. So your most common pieces, Technic pieces that you would use to build attachments. We also have them broken out into general core values sets, like general Lego bricks that you would use to do a core values challenge. So they're different sets. We have lots of baggies in milk crate cubes all over the shop, broken out, depending on what we need to do at that time. And then they have their own packet. If perchance they need a piece that's not in there, and we've all built these pieces, we know the most common pieces, but if there is one of the coaches or mentors actually gets those pieces for them and brings it over. Yep. Any other questions, comments, concerns? I'm sure there's plenty of concerns.
How did you go about building the field pieces, the actual challenge kit field pieces? Did you break those up and give them to different kids?
That was probably the easiest thing. And Joe's group actually did that Wednesday, but I don't think they had any. That's easy because that's almost naturally designed for distancing. You give the kid the numbered bags. You give him or her the laptop, and away they go. So Joe can add in on more of that. He actually experienced that just the other day.
Yeah, I mean, really all we did, we had, I think, 4 out of our, I think we had 4 kids. That was our first actual return to in-person meeting for this year's FLL team. Until then, we were doing Zoom. But what we did really was we gave them a model, you know, and set them up on a computer or the smart board. We actually had mostly on the smart board because we had just had split screen and we put 2 on each, and I had 4 kids there. So they were kind of running off of that. I had one person kind of moving if they had to change screens. But we gave them specific sets. The only problem is some of the pieces end up being in different bags where they come back and are looking for things. I had one of my FRC students who mentors the team. She was exclusively taking them out. She'd sanitize her hands every time before she touched any parts, which is overkill in reality. You know, but it's just those kinds of things that if you can be more cautious, you're better off being cautious. Because, and you know, this is kind of slightly off topic, but the reality is no matter what we do, no matter how you guys distance your teams or try and build, you know, I'm seeing loads and loads of people posting pictures of teams with a board in their driveway outside. The catch is when they're showing these pictures, a lot of the times you got 10 kids and 2 mentors standing at the table. The table's just too small for that. That's where your risk is really going to grow. You know, so that's the kind of stuff. I mean, the table's great outside, but you've still got to distance everybody. I mean, we're like, and that's part of what we did Wednesday with the girls team was positioning. What are you doing? Where are you going? But truthfully, the build part was the easiest part. The only thing I can say that you know, it'd be nice if model number 1 was all in one bag, model number 2 was all in number 2, with the crossover pieces that they end up needing there to have one bag. You just have to make sure that you don't have 20 hands suddenly going in those bags, grabbing a piece they need and walking away. So we laid everything out on a table towards the second half of the meeting. Funny, because we socially distanced each Lego part, but we had them all laid out on the table where if a kid needed a specific one, they could walk up and touch that one. And again, it's like we're training these kids in a world that really nobody wants to live in. You know, but you got to tell them, okay, well, this is easier. Don't bother Miss Haley with what part you need. They're all laid out, but when you go up, be very sure that you know it's the one you need. Don't touch 5 and find the one you need, you know. And if you do, be honest. Just tell us, then we'll sanitize that part. I mean, those are the kinds of things where it's kind of overkill, but you don't know, and you got to be safe. Biggest
Agreed.
problem we really looked at, and even with camp, every day was this roller coaster adventure. Waivers are great, social distancing is great, but if you're not being careful and you do have somebody comes in with they've been in contact with COVID, or they have it, suddenly you're shut down until there's an all clear. So, you know, it kind of is. And like Sam said, like some things in the beginning of camp, we were crazy. Somebody walked by and put their hand on a desk because kids left to touch everything they walked by. I'd be going, you know, we got to sanitize that corner of the counter. We got to do this. I don't know that you have to, you know, and because the contacts things all of a sudden have changed, we did get a little bit more lax with that and a little bit more, you know, focused on the real risks. Like she said, kids pulling off masks, you know, that kind of stuff. And that's where the build thing was a great kind of opportunity to see how the kids would react to the don't touch thing. And I'm talking about girls that have known each other for 5 years. I mean, they used to running in and hugging each other and, you know, building on top of each other. And you know, it's just the way it is. But it actually went fairly well for the first meeting. Again, we do, you know, fortunately have a very large shop. So, I mean, we're dispersing, you know, 4 to 10 kids in 4,000 square feet, you know, or 3,000 square feet. That makes it much easier on our side.
Can you talk about how many actual kids you had at your camp all total? Like how many participants came in?
Okay, so on our biggest week, we had 8 kids. So, and that was actually broken up between our FRC camp and our FLL camp. So we had 2 over in the FRC. So they primarily, so 6 were actually integrating in with the FLL part. Though at lunchtime they all came together as one. So, and then we had group activities. So, but that's our biggest. Now Monday is our first meeting for our first full 10 kid FLL program. But we still have a few of those that won't be able to come out. That's a full team of 10, but I think only about 8 are actually allowed out of the house. So we'll see.
Can I ask a question about the Lego CAD software that you use? You're going to post that maybe in the chat or something, or is that on that website? And was it free or you
It's
know?
free. And my daughter's on the meeting too. She's waving. She's going to post the links up in the chat. So
Okay, great.
you can do Lego, both of them.
Yeah, I'll do LG.
Okay. And then
Okay.
anything else you have. So she'll
Yeah,
post them, and then we can put something together and get it out. So if you miss it, chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you could do that, what I'll do is I'll put it up on our website. There might be some training that goes into it that might be on YouTube. I can go look for that, and I'll send
Okay.
out. I'll send out in a team update. Have you all been getting your team blasts from me?
Yes.
Has anyone bothered to look at them? I'm just throwing it out. Go ahead. You don't have to answer me.
I don't think.
I looked at it, but I haven't gone in detail.
Okay.
But Frank, can I ask you a quick question? So, I coach a Philly team, and if they're moving everything from January to May, will there be any type of events virtual for them to compete in?
It's Philadelphia School District.
Right.
Are you part of the Philadelphia School District teams?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we already talked to them, and they said that that's what they wanted to do. Sure, you could compete in all of the stuff that we're doing here. Yes, you absolutely could.
But that'll be before January, right? Or around January.
It'll be the events will be in January, correct? With the teams that are going, let's call it the early season and the late season. The early season is starting now. We're putting it off 1 month so it allows teams more time to figure out what they're doing. And the events are going to be in the January, February timeframe. The Philadelphia School District is starting, from what I understand, they're starting in January and pushing everything out to May, the competition in May. They're going to have one competition in May for Philadelphia school PSD teams.
Okay.
So, but you're welcome to be part of anything that we're doing.
Okay, thank you. I don't know how that's going to work yet, but I'm trying to gather all ideas for virtual, because I got a feeling our team may be completely virtual. There may not be an option for hybrid or any driveways and garages to use.
It's going to be tough to build, though. That's going to be your real challenge. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was thinking about the CAD. The CAD might be good, and then maybe rotate the robot from house to house. I don't know. That's what I was thinking.
Yep. Maybe.
You have options from house to house. You keep it at one person's house. We did run just solely virtual robot camps too. And what we did, our mentor had a robot and a table. The kids would program online. They'd program together collaboratively. And then the one mentor would run the robot, and then, phone, so the camera, so you could see it, and then they'd go back. And they did the same. That's where we really got the hands-on experience with the CAD files, is during that completely virtual camp. Where the kids would design it, he would download the file, he would build it for the next day, then they'd have it, and then they'd work on changing it. So there's another whole step involved, but it certainly can be done, especially if you're upbeat and fun, and we're all in this together, and that's kind of where we went into the attitude with our virtual camps, and was like, we're going to make this a good time. So it can be done.
Yeah, creatively,
Creatively. And
exactly.
You don't do this if you're not creative.
Exactly. Thanks a lot.
Hey, Sam, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I have a question about programming collaboratively online. Was it something like this where the screen was shared by the coach with the software, and then the kids just viewed it and kind of gave their input?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was exactly what happened. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I think some of this really comes down to, and it seems kind of odd, at least it did when we said it with the camp thing. When we were preparing, like at one point we said, the kids should role play this. They should be figuring out what's going to happen, what can go wrong. How, what did we forget? And truthfully, like what I just said about the Wednesday night build, we didn't really plan for the parts of the bag that were mixed, so we kind of made one plan. We used it, then it became tedious and difficult, and then we came up with plan B, which was lay out the parts very far apart, stop the kids, here's how you do this. This is what you're going to have to do, be honest, because it benefits everybody, and that did make it a lot easier. So in camp, we kind of stopped one day and we let our FRC mentors who run camp role play it. They had a blast, first off, because they got to actually annoy the people who were, the mentors versus the ones that were role playing as kids. But you kind of did see how things would happen, and how the moments that you really weren't thinking. And like they were obnoxious, and they walked by and they touched everything and they didn't listen. And they, we were trying to do things that were fun with pool noodles and, 5 feet apart, 6 feet apart playing games. But kids want to grab the pool noodle and rip it away from each other and do this and then start beating the person with the one they just took. And, there's little weird things that you're going to pop up, and all of a sudden you got to stop, and your brain wants to panic for a minute and go, what just happened? Because we don't want a problem. So sometimes you just have to, I think, plan ahead and kind of just actually role play this stuff or walk through it very closely. And I think that did help us a lot. Kind of every day you saw and learned new things. And I think truthfully with our program, with as many teams as we're opening up and starting this week, the knowledge that we got out of camp is invaluable. It's just, there's no way we would have been this prepared for that without that. So we certainly are, glad we did that and had the opportunity when we opened, but, glad that we can actually kind of give some other people the perspectives of what happened real world. So.
Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I do receive your team blast and they're really useful. Thanks for that. I have a question. It's a little bit on a different topic, on a robot design and the and also on the programming. Is it okay to ask the question now?
I think so. Sure.
Okay. So we are using the the Scratch in the iOS, Apple iOS. Is there any disadvantages of using the Scratch iOS versus EV3, the the component-based programming.
Is that a different programming for the EV3?
Correct. Yeah. So I said if you go to this is Scratch version of the EV3 programming, correct? Scratch.
Yes, there is. And you have Apple, so you have access.
Yes.
You're using that. Yeah.
Exactly. So is there any,
And you are allowed to use alternate programs.
okay? Is there any disadvantage in using the alternate programs compared to the EV3 2.0 or brick programming?
I wouldn't know. Anybody?
So actually, this during summer camp, I apologize. We have a speaker
Go
running
ahead.
at the same
Go ahead.
time.
You're okay. You're all right.
I actually use the Scratch programming, and a lot of the students, when you're learning programming in school, you use Scratch, so they'll be more familiar with it. I had never used Scratch before I started being a summer camp counselor, and it's almost exactly the same. Like the blocks are very similar, but between EV3G, or I think it's EV3 Lab now. They just changed the name, I don't know, and Scratch. So if you want to use Scratch and you have a MacBook or something like that, I recommend that you use it. I know it hasn't come out yet for Windows, but if you want to use Python or any other thing, I have no idea. I can't help you with that, but with Scratch, definitely it's a awesome programming.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Casey. So another question on the robo design. So when we build the components or attachments for the robo, does it need to come from this kit that we receive from the FLL, or we can use the external parts too?
Any FLL component, and you guys catch me on this, but it's my understanding any FLL Lego component is allowed to be used from any kit, from anything you buy.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen really crazy things out there.
Any Lego kit that exists at all, you can use a part.
Any Lego part.
Yes, it just has to. Unfortunately, there's so much stuff on eBay that people advertise that is Lego, that is not. And one of my teams 5 years ago got caught, not unintentionally. They weren't doing it intentionally, but they were using a pulley and a winch kind of thing, and it was branded Lego, and it even said Lego embossed on it, but you had to look really closely to realize that it was not quite the logo. You just got to be careful. But I've judged events. I've been robot inspector. We're not trying to ruin kids' days here. You just got to be honest about what you're doing. But it really is any Lego part that exists that is official. You just can't use stuff that's not branded that.
Right.
Any logo part. It does not need to be FLL. Any Lego part.
Right. Correct.
Yep. Any Lego part.
I've seen people use the Lego pneumatics. I've seen that on some of the robotics. Yeah.
Can I just add that there are some parts that were in limited kits that are very, very helpful, like the multi-directional little silver balls that are really hard to find. If there's somebody that has some type of list of like the most helpful parts I came across one year, but it's worth doing a little bit of research on that. I find most of my parts like on eBay to supplement what we have.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Isn't there a website you can go to buy just certain Lego parts? I know
There is. I mean, everything's not always available there, but there's some key parts. Like people would die, and I still don't think they exist, to be able to use mechanisms. And I've seen mechanisms on FLL robots walk in competition, and you're right away because they don't exist, or at least they didn't. Lego changes all the time, so I don't know, but they didn't. And the whole time they built this robot with mechanisms, and that's so blaringly obvious. I mean, if you're talking about a little Lego piece, that happens. But they had to take the wheels off the robot, which changed everything that they really programmed.
Yep.
It really was. The mentors just weren't paying attention. And it was, trust me, super cool robot.
I've never done that. I've never done that in a bit.
But it's not that hard to find out. I think internet gives us great resources to figure out what's out there.
Okay.
When we ran our summer camp, I specifically take them out of the kit so that the kids can't get a hold of them, because if they're not trying to put them on their robot, they like to play with them, like have them go up and down. And so I just remove that from the situation every year so they don't touch it.
What part are you talking about?
They have like these long tracks that you can actually make like a macadam wheel, like you can connect them. You can make like a loop, And I don't know what kit they came in, but they have somehow made their way into our bin. And once kids get a hold of them, they can't stop.
So like a tank tread?
Yeah.
In the education, you probably got an education kit mixed in with everything. They came in ours. So.
Okay.
Tank treads, you can actually use tank treads if they're Lego, actually. And there are some out there, like the big backhoe kit, that they actually have tank treads. We've tried to build one, so, and it was a horrible, horrible experiment.
It went horribly wrong. Go ahead, Cassie.
I was wondering, there was a mention by, I think it was Sam, that she said that she had like a waiver that she had used with the summer camp. I wonder if you could share that.
Yeah, we can go ahead and
if you send that to me, Cassie, what I'll do is send it out as part of a team blast, and say this is something that again, I'm couching this as this is some things that teams are doing. I'll remove your name from the top of it and say, if you guys are thinking about this, go check legally if you're okay with it, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I was going to say, we don't mind sharing it, but it is not lawyer prepared.
Is it a doc or a PDF? What form have you got it in?
we have it in both.
If you can send me the doc, I'll remove the part that says use guys, and then I'll put it out there and say, here's a template that you could use, but you have to get it legally checked. I'll make sure with the board that I'm allowed to do that. But it seems like it should be coming from me. So, okay.
Yeah.
Agree.
And Frank, I'm affiliated with New Jersey, South Jersey, under Eric Milo from Rutgers, and John Grader is very involved with us.
Well, but the Jersey whole thing changed. There's a new lead mentor out there now, so we have to see a lead. What do we call ourselves? PDP? Yeah, product delivery partner, program delivery partner. So we'll see what happens with those guys. So yes. Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Ryan. This is your show. Is he there?
Brian left for work, so it's just me, Manning. But if anyone has any more questions, feel free to ask them. And also just another reminder that LC does have some videos up that you might find helpful on YouTube, and you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. So that was our pitch for today. Thank you for coming. And like I said, if anybody has more questions, please feel free.
Frank, I had a quick question. We usually buy the mat and the registration by now, but obviously we're kind of delayed. We don't know if our school district in Chester County, PA, is going to allow clubs. So that's going to be the first thing that we have to have approved. And with everything going on with sports, it's hasn't been decided yet. But is registration and purchasing of the mat, is that going to be pushed back where before it was like beginning of September, the cutoff was right there? So do you know how long that teams can, what's the deadline, do you think, or what do you think?
Well, because of the number of events we're having, I'm actually starting to play with that now. We're actually switching accounting systems. I'm probably going to start sometime in November, and it'll go all the way through December, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I assume too. I just wanted to double check and see where they were coming from. I would assume that things were pushed back because.
You mean what's first doing?
Well, it went like usually. There's not really a deadline, but mats usually run out after a period of time. I imagine that that's not really going to happen until later or happen at all.
I think they're going to have a plethora of mats.
Okay, I just want to double check because I don't want to disappoint the kids and the parents in my district because it's a big program, it's very popular, the kids really benefit greatly from it, as everybody here knows. I just wanted to double check and make sure.
Yep. How many kits are you looking for? 4?
Probably, 4.
Okay.
Just to tag off on that, LC hasn't bought their kits yet either. because we were waiting to hear from our school if we were allowed to have meetings. It sounds like we're not. So we have to go back to our coaches and say, are you willing to take this on in your homes and virtually, and try and figure it out on your own? So we too haven't bought our stuff yet.
So LC said that you're not allowed to hold teams in the building.
Well, it was worded that they would prefer the meetings to be directly after school, which would be difficult for us. And there was a limit on who could come in. And there was, is it going to be an LC kid or is it going to be kids from other schools kind of thing? So like for contact tracing. So yeah, we're going to be doing a virtual type of
Got it.
form.
Yeah, Frank, Archbishop Wood, what we got from Archbishop Wood basically is that you can't bring in any students from any other area, from any other locale other than the locales that are associated with the school itself.
Right.
I forget what they called that. And that's in our diocesan program, or not diocesan policy requirement right now.
Right.
So we can't bring in grade school kids into our building. The only people allowed, the only students allowed in the building are those that have opted for face-to-face classes.
Got it.
We're trying to figure out how we're going to run our FLL program too.
Right, right.
I just wanted to throw out, we're going to post up the Google Classroom. Before we even had summer camp, we created a fictional FLL team out of our FRC kids called the Legally Ocelots. Don't ask, they name themselves. And in there is all the links and resources we sort of brainstormed and played around with and learned from when we were trying to figure out how you could actually run a virtual FLL team. So yeah, that Google Classroom is primarily run and operated and used by FRC kids, but it gives you a great bouncing, a stepping stone from where you want to go. Some of the links that we ended up not using are still there, so they might work better for you than they did for us, or, play around with it. Feel free. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it has Lego CAD programs that you can use. It has ways that you can help program. It has things for your project, core values, all sorts of different links that you might find useful.
So in that virtual environment, just to clarify, so they built it in CAD. Did an adult then take that and build it? Or did you actually have one child at a time come in and use what the group had done collectively to build?
Sam and Joe, I think that's you. This is for your all virtual building.
Right.
Did an adult build the robot and
Okay. I got it now. Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself.
All right.
They for the actual virtual summer camp, it was one of our mentors who is an FRC kid. That's who did the building. For FLL, we are planning on having a kid actually do the building. So.
Thank you. I think that's the part that we're all struggling with, is that, as mentors, we're supposed to be just that, mentors. We're not really supposed to have our hands on anything. And that's the part I'm really struggling with. Like, I know if we did that route, Sean Murray, who just spoke earlier, is my colleague. I would be, I would build only what was in the schematics. But then again, who's to say that somebody else wouldn't question the fact that I had made alterations? And I don't know. That's the part that Sean and I are struggling with. We work for Avon School District right now. No kids are allowed in the building, period, unless they're being brought in for a psychological evaluation or something of that nature. So that's what we're struggling with. Like, how do you go about doing the building piece? Do you rotate the robot around the home, but then do you send the whole mat as well to each home? So that the robot can be tested out. I don't know if anyone has thought that through or not.
So our original thought, and it's just a thought, like we haven't worked through it, but we were going to have our coaches have their robot and their mat in their home, and then have to break up their team probably at least in half, so that like on, this week you might have 4 kids come over in your garage, socially distant, work on something, and the next week the next 4 kids come over to your garage and work on something.
Yep.
So that they do get to touch the robot and they do get to build. But it's going to be a challenge. When I was coaching it, we were like, try this, run it, try this, run it, turn that back, run it. Like,
Right.
just to get one mission done, it was like, 15, 20 times of like reprogramming just the littlest thing. So doing this virtual or having only half the team there, it's just going to really slow the process down, and you're just going to have to be patient and creative.
Yeah, and you went right to where I was going to go next. You're right. It's those nuances, right, during a meeting, those little fine tuning things that are difficult. And I'll be perfectly honest, I won't speak for my colleague Sean, but I'll be honest, I don't want to take on the legal responsibility of having kids come to my home and, possibly be infected. I as a public school teacher, as much as I care for these kids, and Sean and I have been doing this together for 18 years, it kills me to possibly not have a season. I just don't see a workaround for us in the public school sector. But Sean, again, I won't speak for you.
We'll see what happens. It's going to be a parent that apparently has to, at least in our public school, or in public schools that are virtual, it's going to have to be a parent that takes that on. And maybe we can help that parent, since we know the program inside and out pretty much. But that's how I would see it.
I think what's important this year to remember is the kids still come first, and that's kind of where I'm stressing about the kid experience, where they're not being in person. They don't have that environment. They don't have what Dean built first on, which is, the teams, the camaraderie, the support, the cheering, the excitement, the fans. That's just, there's so much being lost. I think at this point, the kids come first. And if it has to be where a coach is assembling a robot that they design, that's not the worst thing in the world. I just think you got to be creative here, and ultimately, and it does come down to risk. We're hearing a lot of teams say our schools told us we can't meet. They won't pay for any of this. We can't be on school property. We can't meet as an actual school team off property. We can't do this. We can't do that. And that really does tie your hands. Now you've got, and as was just mentioned, maybe this year you're a home team, where a parent takes on that risk, and that protects everybody that, within the school or the program. But every situation is going to be different. Fortunately, we have a space that we can use. We're not at the mercy of a school district. We have at least some in-person kids on every team that we have. That helps greatly. Robots will be built in our shop. Again, our plan is really positioning. 1 week on our Wednesday girls team, there will be a robot builder. There will be attachment builder. There will be a programmer. There will be, it does get complicated, because when you get to the point where suddenly you don't have a robot builder, now you have a robot builder modifier / runner, because now you're running programs on the table. So my girls talked a little bit about this on their Thursday night virtual, how you see the meeting running, because I wanted to hear what they thought. And I think that's important. Truly, they've got to determine what's fun, what's going to keep them motivated, what's going to keep them in this. This is a world, again, none of us want to live in. But these kids, they're being stolen, robbed of things, events, memories, and the ability to be out and be normal. Right. So it really does kind of come down to what they like, love. Yeah, you can't let them call the shots. Obviously, safety and protecting everybody is important. But, you might have a kid or a group of kids that hates the concept of your mentors or your coaches building a robot that they design, and they're more than happy to have that kit in one person's house the whole time. I think it kind of comes down to, like, I've had parents on Wednesday night, they loved seeing what we were doing, but multiple said, well, is my kid never going to get the program, or is my kid never going to touch the robot? Or that's why. So on Thursday night, the girls said they wanted to make a schedule so that there wasn't confusion, there wasn't wasted time. They come in, so-and-so is the robot builder this week. Next week, somebody else, and kind of just do it that way. So that's kind of what they want to do. I think it just, again, yeah, we don't touch robots. We don't program robots. We don't build attachments. But in this year, as long as we're not just sitting there doing it for them, we just have to make it fun and still exciting.
Yep.
With that said, any other questions that kind of pertain to all that stuff? Okay. Frank, is it okay with you? Obviously, I know your stance, and I get protecting FMA, but if we're looking at potentially doing just unofficial meetup competition types, and we have enough space worked out where we can do that, is this something that like we could maybe put together a brainstorming session with teams that would also be interested in that?
Sure, you can have a scrimmage and just have a meet. Sure, I mean that's absolutely something you can do. First is encouraging in person as long as you follow guidelines.
Right. So can you promote it for us without a problem?
I'll put it on the website and say they're promoting a meet and greet, and yeah.
Cool. Okay. I mean, again,
I'll send you the form that you would fill out to get it onto the website.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yep.
That's great, Joe. I'll be interested, and my team will be interested.
Okay.
I was going to say for my notes, what's the address so we can send everybody to your location, your 4,000 square foot location? But that's good. I don't think that's a problem.
Okay. And we're working on some options. 4,000 square feet clearly is not enough space to do it where we think it'd be safe. And I mean, we're already running, 15 teams out of our shop, 16 teams, whatever.
And you're not the only one doing that. Downingtown Area Robotics is also doing that. They're talking about, and I think if you contact them, they would gladly allow you to bring your team in to kind of bring in your robot, bring in a kid or whoever wants to run it, and have them watch what you're doing, and they'll give you some feedback on, how you can improve what you're doing. They would gladly do that because I know they're going to be doing that.
Yeah, so we're actually looking for a secondary space. My concern is bringing in outsiders. Like our intended setup on our shop is always people from the mall can come in, see the kids working, all the way back to the machine shop, and we have a plexiglass polycarb wall there they can actually watch. And now with COVID, we've blocked the front of the store. Now they can no longer do that. That was always our intention. So we don't want outsiders coming in to risk complicating our program, but we're working on a location that can be set up. We're actually going to have an FTC field there for Penn FTC and potentially multiple tables that can be used. But I also want to do something that's more of a meet competition sense vibe. Again, it would be small, restricted, limited teams, but we could do it multiple times. So that's kind of what I want to get some teams that would be interested in brainstorming on that part.
Right.
Cool. Okay.
Hey, Frank.
Yeah.
I just had a thought. I never thought to ask you, and I haven't seen anything from First. Is it possible to just get extra mats?
I actually thought that I thought about that because I believe they're going to have a whole bunch of these things left over. What would you do with extra mats? Because we probably will only have 8 kids on our team this year, and I've got 8 tables, and I've got 8 Lego kits. Right.
If I had the mats, then we could literally just distribute tables, mats, and kits to individual students.
Hang on.
We can run that way.
Go ahead, Vicki. Go ahead, Vicki.
We just got an email from First that say this year, and I think they've done this in the past, that you are allowed to order just an extra mat and kit, especially because of social distancing. That just came through maybe Thursday. So you can just pay for the mat, but I think it's 1 extra per team. But that way, in mind that you can hand that off to another family if you're doing the social distancing. But I just saw that email come through this week, so.
I didn't see that. Okay.
Yeah.
You could always order 1 extra mat and kit. That's like $70. But I'm wondering whether or not we can order more than that.
No, it said specifically it was limited to 1 per registered team. So, and I think it's like $79 or something with tax on it if you pay tax. Most don't, but I thought I got mine yesterday, but it did say that it was 1 per registered team.
That's one extra, Joe, or just one?
Yeah, one extra. So your original one plus one. So you could buy up to 2 per team.
All right, Frank. So would FLL, if Sean and I could get away to do everything virtual, and Sean and I are at the building and we do live Zoom sessions with the kids, would FLL be okay with Sean and I building the stuff, using the schematics the kids have given us, and actually running the robots on the mats if the kids are there live via Zoom, helping make those changes, and then come the competition time, we find a way to bring the kids in to actually videotape the runs? Like how stringent are we going to be?
We're not.
All right.
I mean, you know, even with the way the rules are today, maybe I'm wrong, but I know when I was doing FLL many years ago, you know, it was like herding cats. You couldn't get them to do anything. So you were in there saying, come on, let's go. I mean, I programmed a lot of that stuff with them because none of them wanted to program. It was a little harder then. It was a lot harder then because you had to draw all the stupid lines and all that. It was horrible. So I don't, look, the ultimate goal is to get the kid engaged and be part of it. If the kid learns something, we're all happy with that. However you do that, once you get to the competition, you have to make sure the kids at least understand. So any programming changes or anything, they can make them. If someone has a question, they understand what's going on. I always liken it to a friend of mine, Dennis Hill. I don't know if you all know Dennis Hill. He actually built the thermo generators on the Cassini spacecraft, big softball-sized pieces of plutonium. His daughters went through the program, FLL, and every year his robots were kicking butt. And people were like, that's no fair, he's building it. He said, no. He said, I am coaching them on what to build and the decisions, but they're actually doing it. And if you ever sat in a design room with those girls, you were blown away because they knew what the heck they were talking about. So it's a hard call. It's a hard call. I mean, I'm going to tell you, go ahead and do it so that you have a season and make sure the kid gets something out of it. You know, it's tough because it's a focus thing that the kid has to go and focus on. And, you know, I don't know how much they're going to be able to do that.
Okay, well, good, because Sean and I have been struggling with that because, Sean and I have always done mini lessons on things like Sean
Right.
will be monitoring table. I'll be taking kids aside and saying, all right, those of you are interested in working in a certain sensor, here's a sensor. This is a basic program.
Right.
And then Sean and I really take a hands-off approach and say, you know what you do with that knowledge that we've given you in bits and pieces and you incorporate in, great. We've never really put our hands on the robot a whole lot.
But I mean, if they're doing something and you have an idea, you can say to them, "Hey, try this or try that." I mean, do you allow yourself?
We do.
Yeah,
We do. But this is taken to another level where your hands are all over the robot. So
you might not, but otherwise you don't have a season. You know, otherwise you don't have a season.
Right. I hear what you're saying, Frank. So
to those people that are on here, am I wrong in what I'm saying? Is that no?
Okay.
I think you're okay.
All right.
I think
Frank, you're not wrong in what you're saying, but as a judge advisor,
right, I know.
Oh, you tell me. You tell me.
Well, as a judge advisor, you have to train your students to explain that they really did do it
right.
Under your guidance, as
Correct.
opposed to saying, "Oh no, my mentor showed me exactly what to do and I did it." Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's the catch here. I mean, I've judged many years and, not recently because we've grown too big. I can't find the time, but, with FLL and FRC and obviously junior's a little different, but those things, you can always tell when a kid has no knowledge of a robot, no knowledge of their program, no knowledge of what's happening versus a kid who might have had some input or this or that. You usually can tell those things. And I'm sure you all get that. I mean, you have teams, and some of the teams aren't as, stringent on mentors don't touch. I mean, we've run events and had situations where, we got a dozen reports in 30 minutes where a mentor ripped a laptop out of a kid's hand and started programming because they said he did it.
Right.
Then he took the robot from them and he put an attachment on it, told them they were doing that wrong. And then when you ask kids questions, they don't have a clue.
Right.
You know, and they're as frustrated as we're going to be. But that team got disqualified because they wanted to. I mean, the team literally came to us and said the coach was out of control.
Right.
You know, like, you don't want to be that person. But this is the year, and it goes back to what I just said. We've got to protect these kids and give them the best experience possible. And where do you balance that? So obviously their input, their designs, that's important. You physically putting it together, that's in my view anyway. And again, I don't, you know, this is the rolling world here, but you know, it's important that they have the experience, and we've got to do whatever we can to protect that and make it as much fun and exciting as it can be in the situation we're sitting in.
Right.
So I think you've got to make those judgment calls, and you know, you're not stealing it from them. You're not telling them they can't design it or build it. You're doing it because the situation calls for it and needs it to survive. I mean,
Right.
Frank's right. You either have a team or you don't have a team.
Right.
What do you
Right.
do?
What are you going to do?
Okay. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate your input.
No problem.
Okay, Amy, anything else we want to talk about? Unmute.
No, that was all that we had. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate
Can I
it.
jump in one last second? One
Please,
question.
go ahead.
And then I'll let everybody go. So is there an option? I know you have a planning group for events and that stuff, and you said if we want to have one sign up, you know, again, you kind of know my take. I'd like to give the experience to whoever wants to if we can pull it off safely. But as far as the remote meets, is there any input that can be given from us or people that are going to be involved in these things with their teams that might make it better, more fun, exciting? I mean, I'm not saying they're not capable of it. I'm just curious.
You mean for remote events?
Yep.
My suggestion is send me your feedback and what you're thinking, and I will forward it to First.
Okay.
The best I can do. I have forwarded a whole bunch of ideas.
I mean, more of a local situation of how you guys are doing it, and I don't know if there's a strict platform of how you got to do it, or
No, there's going to be a strict. We were developing a process to say we would do it this way and that way before First said anything, and all of a sudden First started saying a lot of things, and now First is saying we have to follow their process and what it is that they're doing.
Okay, gotcha. All right, sounds good.
Okay, Amy, last words.
Thank you all for coming.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.